As I returned from shopping, I stumbled upon a scene that stopped me in my tracks. There, at the entrance of our home, was my daughter Madison, her figure markedly changed by a big, round belly, crouched down in a way that suggested sheer exhaustion. Her face, gaunt and drawn, mirrored the fatigue that seemed to weigh her down. Madison looked up at me, her eyes unfocused, betraying a mix of confusion and relief at seeing me. Next to her, a little child clung tightly, my granddaughter, Harper, who was calling out intermittently, "Mom, Mom," in a voice filled with unease. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I hurried to bring them inside. My heart heavy with concern, I asked Madison what had happened. With a voice weak from strain, Madison shared that her husband, Stephen, had grown increasingly impatient with her limited mobility due to her advanced pregnancy. In a fit of frustration, he had left her and Harper right in front of our house, abandoning them to fend for themselves. Madison was clearly in her final month of pregnancy, visibly in need of immediate care. Despite the warm sunshine of the days, the wind carried a biting cold that made me shiver, not just from the chill, but also from anger towards Stephen. How could he abandon them like this? Stephen was not known for such rash actions. After all, pregnancy is not an illness. I know plenty of pregnant women at our company who manage just fine working from home. And little Harper, she is always so full of life, albeit a bit loud at times, but that's just how children are. My colleagues' kids might not cry like Harper, but every child is different. I decided to call Stephen, and when I finally reached him, his response was marked by a loud, seemingly intentional sigh. An unemployed, obese, and noisy child is a nuisance. Let the parents take care of them for a while, he said, his words dripping with disdain. Realizing that any further conversation with him would be futile, I hung up the phone, my mind set on focusing solely on caring for Madison and Harper. Time passed, and about half a year later, on a bright afternoon in spring, Stephen unexpectedly called. "Hey, what's going on?" "Your house is gone," he said, confusion lacing his tone. At first, I was puzzled by his words, but then it hit me, he had only just noticed our absence. After learning the truth of our situation, he was speechless, his face, I imagined, turning pale with the realization. "My name is Scarlett, a 58-year-old widow. It's been 3 years since my husband passed away, leaving me to cherish our moments of solitude. His study remains a sanctuary for me, filled with his favorite novels, challenging research papers, and snippets of his thoughts in the form of magazine clippings and diaries. I often find solace there, browsing through the stacked books, each one a memory, a piece of him that is still with me. Madison, Harper, and the ever-distant Stephen reside about a 30-minute drive from me in the next town over. Stephen holds a significant position in the large company his father owns, and at the young age of 33, he is already seen as a future CEO. Madison and Stephen's relationship began somewhat whimsically at a beer party, a night out with friends where fate had them meet through a mutual acquaintance. They kept bumping into each other, sharing drinks and laughter, which eventually led them into a deeper connection. Madison has never been one to make the first move, often calling me, unsure of what to do next. Whenever she sought my advice, my response was simple, "I'm not sure either, but maybe just go out for a meal and enjoy yourselves." I couldn't offer much advice on love, not being very experienced myself. Unlike me, my husband had enjoyed his fair share of romances before settling down. When it came to our daughter Madison's romantic life, he became quite protective, often joking about not letting her date someone strange like him. Despite his protective nature, Madison and Steve's relationship progressed smoothly. A year after they started dating, they announced their engagement. Steve, being the son of a big company's president and excelling in sales, reassured my husband enough to entrust our daughter to him. I remember him later telling me how at ease he felt, sending off our daughter to such a respectable man. Soon after, Madison and Steve married and moved to the next town to start their life together. Initially, Madison would come visit us often, sharing both the joy of discovering her pregnancy and her anxieties about childbirth. Sadly, about 3 or 4 months after we learned of her pregnancy, my husband passed away in a tragic accident. He was involved in a collision with a truck, the driver of which had fallen asleep at the wheel. Both Madison and I were shaken by the suddenness of the loss, finding it hard to maintain our composure in the ensuing days. We rushed to prepare for the funeral, and found ourselves caught up in the myriad procedures required by the company and the government. What struck me as odd during that tumultuous time was how little we saw of Stephen. He had formally introduced himself when he first came asking for our daughter's hand in marriage, but even at the funeral, he only appeared briefly, staying for about an hour before quickly disappearing. I thought it was quite rude, but Madison explained that this was just the way he was. Stephen is always busy with work, she said with a forced smile, a hint of sadness in her tone. It seemed she hadn't had much opportunity to talk with or spend time with Stephen, who had started leaving early in the morning for golf meetings on weekends. While being a president's son might excuse him somewhat, I wished he would consider Madison, especially as she was heavily pregnant. As summer drew to a close, Madison returned to our home to give birth. With her belly fully rounded, she was looking forward to meeting her baby. "It's a girl, we've already decided on a name." "Oh really? What's her name?" I asked. "Harper. Stephen and I chose it," Madison replied, smiling as she spoke. She gave birth within 2 weeks and soon went back to her home where Stephen was waiting. Over the phone, I told her, "Madison, make sure to visit us sometimes." "Harper too." However, Madison's reply was hesitant. "Yeah, maybe once things settle down, I'll come over," she said, her voice conveying uncertainty that lingered like a shadow between her words and the hopeful tone she tried to project. I felt something was off and I hoped it was just temporary. Madison was always busy with childcare and housework, and Stephen, who should have been a reliable partner, often came home late or not until the morning. Even if he is the president's son, is his job really that demanding? I wondered aloud while eating lunch alone. Despite several calls afterward, the responses were always the same. It had been 3 years since Harper was born, but I had only seen my granddaughter once, when Madison gave birth. I wanted to support Madison and had told her so many times over the phone, but her answers remained evasive and terse. Before a long weekend, I decided to call Madison once more. "Hello, Madison, how have you been? I was thinking of visiting you and Harper soon." I knew too much interference wasn't good. Talking with close friends in the neighborhood, I learned that it's become less common to let grandparents see their grandchildren, and too much persistence could upset them, possibly leading to never being allowed to see them again. Madison was my own daughter, but I feared this call might lead to rejection, and I might have to give up. With these thoughts, I waited for Madison's response. "Mom, I'm not feeling well lately and don't want to see anyone. Please don't call for a while." "Are you okay? If you're not feeling well, I'm even more worried. Should I bring over some food?" "I don't need it. Can we stop this?" I'm going to hang up. "Wait, how about Harper? And Stephen, is he doing well? Not caught a cold?" "You're too nosy, Mom. I want to raise my child on my own, so stop calling." Madison hung up, irritated. The call was short, but it shocked me profoundly. I had never imagined Madison felt that way about me. I thought I was being kind, but I was just being meddlesome. I thought, holding back sadness as I stared at the disconnected phone. Maybe she was tired and nervous from childcare, or perhaps I had been too interfering. Considering various reasons, I admitted there might have been fault on my side and decided to refrain from calling. But I couldn't help wondering, had the girl who used to talk to me so openly really changed this much? Despite my doubts and unwillingness to give up on seeing my granddaughter, I continued to call about once a month. Each time, I was met with a cold attitude and was not allowed to see Harper. "Hey, are you feeling okay?" My questions were often left unanswered, and sometimes the call would be disconnected right away. Hoping to at least get a sense of how things were, I decided to call Stephen. He was my daughter's husband, after all, and I thought he might know something about Madison's and Harper's situation. Stephen never answered the phone right away, but late one night, he returned my call. "Madison? Oh, yes, she's fine. She's doing a great job looking after Harper. You don't need to worry." Madison has always been very responsible. Oh, that's good to hear, but could you tell her? I'd like to see her sometime, yes. Of course, it's strange that Madison isn't answering her phone, isn't it? She's not usually like that. Quite troubling. Stephen's words felt insincere, as if he was feigning ignorance about the whole situation. I felt a bit uneasy about his tone, but my suspicions were confirmed about a month after that call, as autumn deepened. Returning from shopping one day, I saw a figure sitting at my front door. At first, I thought a homeless person might have mistaken my home for somewhere else, but as I got closer, I realized it was Madison. Madison, and that belly. And who is this child? I exclaimed in surprise. Madison's belly was noticeably larger, indicating a second pregnancy. Oh, Mom, she murmured, her face gaunt, and she looked extremely tired. Her eyes were somewhat unfocused. Next to her, a child clung tightly to Madison, calling out, "Mom, Mom," for her mom. Realizing this child was Harper, I quickly unlocked my house and welcomed them inside, practically carrying them in. I settled them on the living room sofa and made some hot milk for them to drink. Harper cautiously sipped the still warm milk. "It's cooled down, so it's okay," I reassured her, and Harper drank, leaving a white ring around her mouth. Turning to Madison, I began to ask, "So, what brought this on, sitting outside like that? Where's Stephen? What happened to your home?" Madison began to cry and looked down for a while before she told me. "Take your time," I rubbed her back. After calming down, she explained that as her second pregnancy advanced, she struggled with household chores and childcare, which frustrated Stephen. He had driven Madison and Harper to the front of my house and left them there. Seeing Madison visibly in her final months of pregnancy made me furious. Thinking about what would have happened if I had been away, I wondered, how could he? I immediately called Stephen. He hadn't mentioned Madison's pregnancy during our last conversation, which would have prompted me to help sooner. After several rings, a lethargic voice answered. "Hello, Stephen, what's this I hear about you leaving Madison and Harper outside my house just now?" I asked angrily. Stephen nonchalantly replied, "Well, that's how it is. Madison's been neglecting most of the household duties lately, using her pregnancy as an excuse. Even when I come home tired, there's no dinner ready. Not helping because you think it's all Madison's job. Don't you think you should be supporting your wife? Why should I help? House chores are the wife's job, Madison's job," he retorted. His words chilled me, reflecting a stark indifference to the struggles Madison faced daily. The call ended shortly after, leaving me in a state of shock and resolve. I knew I had to step up and support my daughter, as it was clear that she was not getting the support she needed at home. I have my own work to do, it's only natural she takes care of the house since she's the housewife. Madison is pregnant and thinking it's natural without any appreciation is just too ungrateful. Being pregnant isn't a sickness, right? We have pregnant women at our company who are working remotely just fine. And Harper, always crying and making a fuss, my coworker's kid never makes a peep, he exaggeratedly sighed over the phone. Unfit due to obesity, and noisy kids are a nuisance, let the parents take care of them for a while. The moment I heard that, I realized talking further was pointless. "Fine by me," I said, hanging up, but Stephen's mocking laughter lingered in my ear just before the call ended. I managed to suppress my anger and frustration, focusing on what needed to be done. What needed to be done was taking care of Madison and Harper. Harper's clothes were stained with food and juice spills, turning into spots. Her hair also seemed to smell. First, I decided to give Harper a bath. The spare clothes in the carry case were slightly dirty as well. We'll have to go shopping for clothes with Grandma tomorrow. 3-year-old Harper is talkative, chatting nonstop about her favorite foods, picture books, and characters from the kids' show she's currently obsessed with. Madison, on the other hand, seemed exhausted from being overworked by Stephen, barely able to move from the couch. I hurriedly prepared sheets, making up a bed in an empty room upstairs for Madison to rest. Her skin was rough, and her hair was in disarray, presenting a pitiable sight. Call me anytime if you need anything. I'll take care of Harper, so you just focus on resting, okay? Madison nodded and quickly fell asleep, seeming relieved. The following 1 to 2 weeks were spent nursing Madison back to health and taking care of Harper. However, spending time with my granddaughter, whom I had not been able to see until now, was very fulfilling and not at all burdensome. It was hard for me to be strict when Harper would beg, "Buy it, please." It was hard for me to be strict with that voice. Eventually, as she began to recover, Madison started to open up about her past. Stephen was kind before we got married. He respected my opinions, and we would discuss even the smallest things together. Those were the happiest times. But then she grew sadder. As soon as we got married, it was like he became a different person, issuing orders. "You can't rely on your parents, you must do all the housework perfectly." I just took it all in. However, she was allowed to return to her parents' house when Harper was born. In hindsight, it felt like brainwashing, being dominated. There was even a time he said, "I wasn't allowed to rely on you, Mom, so was that why you hung up quickly when I called?" "Yes, calls with you were forbidden too, so I had to hang up quickly. I'm really sorry." At night, after Harper had fallen asleep, we talked over ginger tea, and I felt an indescribable mix of anger and sorrow. Stephen, who had come to ask for her hand in marriage, never seemed capable of such actions. Yet here he was, causing Madison such pain and even badmouthing her as an inconvenience. What's more, there was suspicion of him having an affair. I smelled perfume on him. He's not the type to wear it, especially not a woman's fragrance. When doing laundry, I noticed his shirts had a sweet scent. Really doubtful, but recalling his late returns and early morning arrivals, it seemed plausible. "Madison, you've been through so much, you've done well to manage on your own," I said, considering how she juggled household chores and childcare while realizing her husband's infidelity. I couldn't help but express my admiration. "No matter the defiance, she is my only daughter and family." Madison cried softly. The gentle autumn weather continued, dry but refreshing and cool compared to summer. Madison's due date was approaching soon. I did everything to pamper Madison and Harper, aiming for their emotional and physical recovery. About half a year passed, and it was spring. While I was preparing lunch, my mobile phone unexpectedly rang, so I stopped to answer it. The caller was Stephen. "Yes, this is Scarlett." "Hey, what's going on? Your house is gone." I was puzzled for a moment, but then quickly understood. "Finally noticed, have you?" I said with a half-smile. Stephen had come to pick up Madison, Harper, and the newborn, only to find the house gone, turned into an empty lot with a for sale sign posted. The move and the house demolition had been completed last month, and Stephen must have just arrived, smugly only to realize for the first time that nothing was there and panic called me. "We moved. You've left the family to fend for themselves for half a year, leaving Madison, Harper, and the baby, all three in my care, haven't you?" "Yeah, I came to pick them up now." "Where are you?" "Came to pick them up, you say?" "Unfortunately, we've moved to a secure apartment, so telling you would be pointless. I'm not considering returning them to you." "Don't joke with me." "I told my parents I'd bring Harper and the baby over." "Give me back the kids," he demanded. His way of talking about the kids as if they were objects disgusted me. "That's a promise you made on your own, we have nothing to do with it, so we won't comply. I'm busy here, so if you don't mind." Just then, the baby started crying. Perhaps Stephen heard the cry over the phone. He muttered softly, "Oh," but I hung up without paying him any mind and rushed to change the baby's diaper in the next room. I could tell Madison was on the phone. "Yes, hello? What?" There was a bit of arguing, then Harper came out of the room looking like she might cry. "Mom is angry," she came to me frightened. "It's okay, it'll be over soon," I hugged her. After about 10 minutes, the noise stopped and Madison came out. It was Stephen. He was demanding the address of the apartment we're now living in, but I flatly refused. "I don't care if he wants to show Harper and the baby to his parents," I said, thinking he had tried the same thing with me. But maybe it was lucky he called. I got to say what I really wanted to. The matter with the lawyer, the matter in question was Steven's infidelity. On that call, I told him we'd be getting a divorce through a lawyer. I'd also be seeking alimony for his affair. I just sent proof of your affair to your dad, and he was speechless. Over the past 6 months, Madison and I had hired a detective to investigate Steven's infidelity, and the result confirmed he had been unfaithful. With 2 young children in such a challenging time, Madison couldn't stay silent about this betrayal. Steven had not expected Madison to suspect his infidelity and was shaken by her knowledge. He must have been pale with shock over the phone, knowing that his own parents were aware of the evidence was even worse. He was outraged, saying, "How dare I do such a thing? But those are my words, considering his parents are quite strict. I wonder if they'll give him a hard time later." Madison's prediction proved accurate, and later a meeting with Steven's in-laws was arranged to discuss his actions. On the day of the discussion, the in-laws apologized first and accepted Madison's divorce. Steven's dad was furious with Steven, saying that a man who cheats despite having a wife and children is not needed, even if he was a candidate for the next company president, and ended up firing him from his own company. In essence, Steven was effectively dismissed. Furthermore, he relinquished custody of the 2 young children, allowing us to raise them. Of course, Steven was also made to pay compensation and child support. As for Steven himself, he was being chased for these payments and was also struggling to repay debts incurred from supporting his affair partner. He managed to find another job, but with a salary that couldn't afford a large house like before. He moved into a small, cheap apartment after Steven lost his potential as the next president. His affair partner cruelly left him. It seems she was not interested in Steven himself, but was attracted to the title he held. Subsequently, Steven tried several times to contact Madison, suggesting they try again or reconcile, but Madison deleted his contact information. The divorce was finalized smoothly, and Madison became single but not alone, with her children growing up well. Though Steven and the in-laws settled their affairs, Steven's dad, feeling responsible, continued to generously support Harper and the other child's upbringing beyond the agreed child support. Despite Madison and I repeatedly refusing, he insisted, so we accepted it for the children's future savings. We also shared photos and videos of our adorable grandchildren with the former in-laws, and even video call when schedules allow. Watching Harper and her sibling, the in-laws seem very happy, treasuring their grandchildren as precious. Harper started preschool and is busy with mud and sand play with friends every day. One sunny afternoon, when I went to pick Harper up from preschool, she was holding a rolled-up piece of drawing paper. "What's that, Harper?" I asked casually, and Harper shyly replied, "A picture of Mom." The preschool teacher mentioned that today they drew portraits as presents for their moms. Harper was too shy to show it to me, but ran home and presented it to Madison. Though I couldn't see what the portrait looked like, Madison was surprised and touched, praising Harper abundantly. Harper's individuality will surely continue to grow. Thinking about her future fills me with hope and anticipation. Now, the 4 of us living together and feeling this happiness feels almost like a miracle. The peace and stability we've created in our little family, against all odds, reinforce my belief that no matter the hardships, there's always a path